Well, my mother worked. She was the only one in the family of 8 that graduated from high school, and she was a legal secretary. And of course, my father left at the beginning of the Depression, so my mother raised 3 of us. And so I figured women can do most anything. And I also got interested in nature because we lived out in the country during the Depression. And I loved the trees and the creeks and the flowers and everything. And I sort of started hiking and joining climbing clubs, and so got along with both men and women. And my father's cousin was the distributor in the Northwest for Pencil Points, which was a magazine of architecture at that time when I was a kid. So I realized there was a profession of architecture, and so I came to school at the UW and majored in art because my father considered himself an artist. And I found that it just didn't turn me on. And so the second year I started in architecture school. And I've loved it, you know, putting buildings together and incorporating the structural, mechanical, electrical, how it all fit together, and solving the client's program and staying within budget and so on. And complying with codes, so you didn't have to redesign it if you didn't comply with the code. So I went into architecture, and I really felt I had a wonderful life. I really enjoyed putting buildings together, as I said, and staying in budget and meeting clients' needs. And mainly technical buildings, laboratories, research laboratories, and theaters that are also very technical. And Trident missile servicing buildings, I did about 9 of those with NVBJ when I was working. So I would highly recommend it to any young woman. I think it's a great field. I don't think my love of nature has influenced it much, except that I like architecture that is not flamboyant. It is more natural and fits into the landscape and doesn't show off and shout and scream how beautiful I am. I think cities can only stand a few very exotic buildings. We should all fit together. Because nobody else was doing it. And there were different organizations that needed an architect in the writing of codes that worked. You know, that they weren't imposing horrendous requirements that cost a lot of money and really didn't save any energy or make any difference. So I thought, well, and nobody else wanted to represent architects on building codes. It's kind of a dull, to most people, profession, part of the profession. So I worked at Madison and Freed, and Pete Peterson, who was there, one of the supervisors, encouraged me to get on a code committee. So I've worked for the city, the county, the state, national codes, and so on. So it's if you don't comply with the code, you have to go back and redesign, and that's a waste of time and money. So nobody else wants to deal with building codes. You know, they're kind of dull to most people. So somebody had to do it. I was an architect, and they needed an architect. I was not a great designer because I worried about details and making things work. Well, just meet your client's needs in the planning of it and the budget and so on. I think my mother did the fact that a woman can do anything she wants, you know, back in the days when women were supposed to be just teachers. So it just made sense to do what I wanted to do, or where there was a need. there were people like Pete Peterson at Durham Anderson Freed that got me interested in building codes and the real need for architects to influence what went into them. So I credit him for that. And Bill Bain, as far as, and other architects, Paul Kirk and so on, are great character people. You know, they have good characters, they're very moral and worry about the good things need to be done, very ethical. So they've been a good inspiration. I think they fit into it beautifully because we worry about the big picture, but we also worry about details, and we worry about getting things done. And I think sometimes many of the men I've worked with would rather talk about it for a long time rather than getting it done. Well, as Dean Herman of the architecture school once said, architecture is history in stone. And I think at the moment we're in a very, very low part of history. And I see the buildings going up now across from where I live. I don't call it architecture, it's making money. Anything that's flashy and bright orange and white and things that really don't work. You cut down all the trees. It's a different attitude about it. It's kind of a me making money ethic. Well, I've worked on city, county, state, and national codes. And mainly the city and the state are the ones that I've worked on so much. Because no other architects, it's kind of not very dramatic committee work. You know, it's what works and doesn't cost the client millions of dollars extra because they don't think about it really doesn't benefit life safety and that sort of thing. So I just filled a niche where most architects don't go on committees. I think most architects worry about that when they're designing, but it isn't a great topic of conversation in committees. So I enjoyed it. You fill a need. Well, I was on city, county, and state building code committees. Okay. And we took what was there and upgraded it, made it more. There were requirements there to for some things that really didn't seem very important that would be very, very costly. And so as an architect, we just couldn't see any reason to keep it in the code. You know, why spend a lot of money on something if it doesn't benefit you? You know, if it was somebody's idea that might save the environment or something, but it really didn't. It cost way much more than the benefit, so it took a lot of stuff out. But no, I found it got to be rather interesting and got to know the people, and things got done. Interesting question. Yes, I think I was one there were two of us that came in at the very beginning, and it was a class of about 80, as I remember. They were all ex-GIs, and that dwindled down. I think we graduated half or a third of that. But, and there was another woman that was there who had been a wave. And after a critique by Lionel Priest, she never came back. But architecture school is really critique. You know, you do something and they come in and they criticize it, you know, and so you have to take criticism. And you learn, that's how you learn. And Jack Spruill was my favorite critic at the time. He was very pragmatic and just a real realist. So that was the one faculty member that I remembered. And this was before Norman and some of the others came, so yeah, it was, and I think we had a good class. Oh, I never felt any difference whatsoever. I'm afraid I'm one of these, I went climbing with men, I had two brothers, we did things together. I just didn't feel, I never felt any prejudice or difference. They were just good buddies. My best friends are men. So, no, Jane is one of my best friends. There was a group of us I call them the old girls, because we're old and we're still girls. And yeah, we went through school together, we roomed together, but all my classmates were great. It was a wonderful time, and I've had a great life with architectural firms, good firms, so I love putting buildings together. Well, if you like it and there's nobody else to do it, you know, stick with it. Even though it isn't design and all of that, but there was a need, and so you do it. And I enjoy it. It's part of putting buildings together, knowing how they work and what should go into codes because it is a problem, and what shouldn't be there because there's no problem. You know, you don't make requirements that really don't make any sense. So, and I worked with the fire department on fire codes, and they were a marvelous group to work with. I still say hello. They are about 2 blocks away from where I live now. But no, it's been, working in codes to me was really exciting and fun. And I'm sure some people just think it's the dullest thing in the world. So I don't draw very well. I don't have architectural lettering. So I really didn't fit into the designer category. But I could put buildings together because I knew the mechanical, what they needed for ductwork, and you allow that in as part of the design. You want to do it once and not have to do it over because something doesn't fit. You know, it's just putting all the pieces together so it works. And it's still within budget and so on. So I think it's a great profession for women. Well, you asked, I think, for some photographs.
Yeah. Just to maybe explain them or...
You know, there's a photograph of me at NBBJ at work in my striped shirt. They're a great company to work for. They break down in studios, so there's never more than, 20 to 30 people in one group. It isn't as if you're getting people from 3 stories up as part of your team. So a group of little teams in a studio, and there are 6 or 7 or 8 studios. So I was lucky to work at NBBJ, and they were great people, and did great architecture, I think. It was a good experience. And there's a picture of me at some college do, and then a picture of me in old age. It all changes, and there's nothing that stays the same. But anyway, I think it's been a wonderful career. I've enjoyed it. I just really think I was very lucky to go into architecture. I think if I'd stayed in art, I would have been unhappy because what do? You're just thinking about yourself all the time.